I ngā ruahine, e ngā mareikura o te ao, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Haere mai tātou, ki tēnei rā nui, mō ngā wahine o te ao. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings to you all. I'm really delighted to be able to join with Global Women, an organisation I'm extremely proud of, to mark International Women's Day 2017. It's been a busy day, actually. I know it's like this for the Minister almost every day, but this is the third speech out of 4. It's different, I promise. So all around the world, people are joining together to celebrate the social, cultural, and political achievements of women. And in this country, we do have a lot to celebrate. Nearly 125 years on from being the first country in the world to give the women the vote, we've become one of the most gender-equal nations in the world. Each year, the World Economic Forum measures the economic participation, educational attainment, political empowerment, and health and survival of women. Our 9th place in the 2016 Global Gender Gap Index puts us ahead of many countries such as the UK, the USA, Australia, and Canada. Women have the freedom to participate in every sphere of New Zealand life: education, sport, politics, religion, business. Our right to do this is protected by law, and more importantly, it's well accepted in our society. It's a great time and a great place to be a woman. The idea that girls can do anything became part of our national consciousness with the so-called second wave of feminism, the women's liberation movement, back in the 1970s. I know it gave me the impetus to study law at Victoria University, where, in my very first week, I was astonished and inspired by the visit of Germaine Greer, who celebrated International Women's Day in New Zealand in 1972. She was bold and articulate, and her book, The Female Eunuch, became a sort of Bible for we baby boomer feminists. Her powerful and explosive address in the Auckland Town Hall 45 years ago today culminated in her arrest and conviction for the use of obscene and indecent language. But that was actually incidental. Her visit was a call to arms, and as a 17-year-old girl, newly liberated from Hamilton Girls High, I felt empowered. Law was quite different from the traditional occupations that young women were steered into back then, like teaching, for example. My parents were in fact both teachers, and so I was keen to spread my wings and head in a different direction. My recollection is that there were about 10% of my first year law class female students. But that actually didn't bother me. I didn't feel different. It was an exciting and intellectually stimulating time to be at university, and it seemed to me that the world was changing fast. The women's liberation movement was powerful and unstoppable. The world would be our oyster. Unfortunately, when I graduated, I discovered that the local law firms hadn't received the Girls Can Do Anything memo, and they didn't seem to be impressed with the ideals of the women's movement. For various reasons, which on reflection were somewhat spurious, they declined to hire me. What I did get offered was a junior lectureship at the law school, teaching, in other words. Not knowing what else to do, I took the job. However, it gave me the opportunity to complete a master's degree, which I wouldn't otherwise have done, and it ultimately led to an offer to join a private law practice. I was on my way. This story, for me, in a very small way, illustrates the theme for International Women's Day 2017, Be Bold for Change. Sometimes being bold involves grand gestures and large-scale organising. Think of the suffragists in the early 1890s who went from door to door and town to town, gathering thousands of signatures on the various women franchise petitions. Their boldness and assertiveness helped create legislative change that altered the political face of our country forever. But for me and my female colleagues a century later, being bold meant continuing to pursue our paths in the face of obstacles. Often we had to work hard to get in the door. It wasn't easy, and there were many who doubted our abilities. Being a typical Kiwi woman, I adapted my style, I bit my lip, and simply got on with it. I'd learned the rules of rugby and cricket thanks to my father, so I could converse with my male colleagues, and I simply got used to working in a male-dominated environment. From time to time, I was shocked by displays of conscious discrimination, and sometimes from unlikely sources. I have a very clear memory of a shareholder, an older woman, publicly questioning my suitability and aptitude as a company director at a shareholders' meeting in the 1990s, apparently on the basis of my being female. I really didn't know what to say, and so I was grateful for the support of the chair of the board, a man, who spoke up in my defence. It was an interesting experience and a reminder that the journey towards a more gender-equal workplace was never simply an issue of male versus female. There were women who weren't comfortable with the idea of women lawyers, doctors and engineers, and there were men who were vocal champions of gender equity. The diversity of the 21st century workplace is a tribute to all of those who look past gender and recognise the benefits that accrue to everyone from more equal participation in the workforce. In the 1990s, it felt as though we'd broken through sufficient glass ceilings in political, professional, private and public sectors. The country seemed to be run by women. The battle had been won. But looking back, I realised that trailblazing by a few extraordinary individual women was not enough to change a culture. In many ways, we remain a patriarchal society. At least unconscious gender bias is now more widely recognised, and, like climate change, fewer people seek to deny it. While we can and should celebrate our successes, despite many campaigns fought and won, we can still all point to evidence of gender inequity. Some 40 years on from my university experiences, there are still issues that need to be worked on. Women are still far more likely to be the main caregivers for children and elderly relatives. It can be challenging to juggle these demands with work. Some organisations are exploring new ways of working, job sharing, flexible working hours, and the ability to work from different locations are some examples of arrangements that support people to contribute in the workplace. Some places have got real innovation. I read recently that Dunedin gaming company Rocketworks offers its employees unlimited holidays and no set working hours. But that's not aimed specifically at helping women, but nonetheless these innovative approaches are really useful to increase women's participation. An area of great interest to me, as indeed the Minister, is the gender pay gap. Now, considerable work has indeed been done in this country on reducing that pay gap, including increasing the education and skill level of New Zealand women, so that women are now, on average, more highly qualified than men, yet that 12% pay gap stubbornly remains. In 2016, I had the privilege of chairing the Joint Working Group on Pay Equity, and through that process, I came to understand more clearly the challenges faced by workers in female-dominated workforces, such as early childhood education, aged care workers, and social workers. Recent international evidence also indicates that when women enter a previously male-dominated field in large numbers, the average pay drops. even if the work being done remains the same. Just yesterday, the Minister for Women released new research that demonstrates the behaviour, attitude and assumptions that drive that gender pay gap. We are being challenged to acknowledge and discuss these issues more widely, and we all need to be part of that conversation. Changing attitudes takes time, but it can be done. I spoke this morning in Wellington of the importance of female role models. We have seen many inspiring women leaders in New Zealand, some of whom have become household names. For all that success, women remain underrepresented in the top echelons of the private sector, with only 17% of our directors female, and only one of our top 50 companies currently has a female CEO. That's quite a contrast with the state sector, where women hold 45% of the leadership roles. Even Australia has a higher representation of women in private sector board governance roles at 25%. That's a significant reversal from the relative position just 20 years ago. During my career as a company director, I was often the only woman in the boardroom, and I found that it was hard to speak out and be bold for change on one's own. The state sector's success in encouraging women leaders tells us, as if we needed to know, that women have both the ability and the desire to take on these roles. It would be great to see that emulated in the private sector. In the 1990s, we were told that change was happening and it was just a matter of time. 20 years on, we can fairly question just how long it will take. I wonder whether it is now time to establish quotas to make that final breakthrough. Many of you in this room are in positions where you can use your considerable talent and expertise to support and enable other women. Indeed, it is the principal reason why Global Women exists. Perhaps when you consider the Be Bold for Change message, you might give some thought as to what you can personally do in this area. There are seats at the table for us, and we have an important part to play in encouraging other women to take up those seats too. For me, the Be Bold for Change message is a reminder not to be complacent about the gains we've made. At a personal level, it's about taking risks and seizing the opportunities that are put in front of you. As leaders, it's about taking responsibility for making our workplaces more reflective of the New Zealand we see around us. Individually, we can make a difference, but together we can change society. That's a really powerful thing and a great message for the rest of the world about the value of gender equality in the workplace. After all, as the American politician Bella Abzug said, the test for whether or not you can hold a job should not be the arrangement of your chromosomes. Kia ora, hui hui tātou katoa. Okay.